Hey everyone, I am here to talk to you about human sex trafficking and how to identify it and how to possibly help save a victim. All right, what is human sex trafficking? Human sex trafficking is the purpose of forced labor, sexual slavery, and commercial sexual exploitation. Sex trafficking, where does it begin? How sex trafficking begins is drugs and alcohol are the top two priorities of how this can get started. Also, fraudulent advertisement, promising jobs such as being a waitress or a model, and it ends up that you are not, but was promised to be. And also working through educational history. And according to the Oasis of Hope, all trafficking victims come from rural, suburban, or urban settings. Here is a list or graph of 2016 of how many calls were made for sex trafficking. And according to the National Trafficking Hotline in 2016, they received 34,068 calls, emails, online tips on human trafficking, and the majority of the calls came from Missouri, which made it the 17th highest call volume in the nation. And also here you see a list of, there was 426 total calls, 135 human trafficking in Missouri reported to the hotline. 18.5% of those were potential label trafficking. 70.4% was sex trafficking. 38.5% were trafficking of minors, and 71.1% were females. And over in the other corner, you see a graph that says over 300,000 females are sold a year in America, and the typical age of trafficking is 12 to 14 years. Where victims may be found, where you might find these victims is on the side of the streets or work establishments, brothels. These are homes where prostitutes are sold for sex trafficking, strip clubs, and porn houses. And also these types of places where the victims are found could be under disguise, which means they don't look like people could be sold there, such as massage parlors, escorting services, adult bookstores, modeling studios, and lastly, bars and strip clubs. Visible indicators of trafficking, what you would be able to see or notice of a victim. Over-controlled security at the business site, such as barred windows, locked doors, they're out in the middle of nowhere. And lastly, surveillance cameras. Women can't leave unless escorted by someone such as their pimp or trafficker or other worker. All victims live in the same location. That may include a brothel or website, and is driven to and from location and has to work by their trafficker. If victims need to be taken to the doctor, hospital, or clinic for any type of medical care, the pimp may act as a translator to be less identified. Heavy lines of men coming and going out of the location is also a visible indicator of trafficking happening. And then sadly, these victims have or are living a life of abuse and have been cut off from their basic human rights and are under complete control of their pimp. They are kept in bondage, and either through a combination of fear, intimidation, abuse, or psychological control. Lila's story. I wanted to read you a story. Picture yourself as a young woman that was raised in 417 land. All of a sudden you realize you had a chance that you have prayed for. Clasping an old part of a pair of gloves that contain your possessions, you made a break for it, your feet burning with pain from the boots that rubbed against your bare skin. Scared to death, you reached a country highway where you saw a coming car, not knowing if your trafficker was inside that abducted you during a drug deal. Sadly, this is what happened to Lila. And over to the right side, these were the boots that she was wearing when she was rescued. 5 ways to stop sex trafficking for a child. Educate yourself, recognize the signs, report any suspicion, raise awareness through public speaking conventions, and lastly, take action. If you notice a child that could be in sex trafficking, don't be scared to reach out and take action. In 2018, this year, there was a bill that was signed by President Trump and the Senate, and it happened in March, and it gave the final approval to a bill at cracking down on online sex trafficking. Online sex trafficking has been growing rapidly in the recent years. And this bill surprisingly passed the House and cleared the Senate overwhelmingly, 97-2. And according to the National Center for Missouri and Exploited Children, have noticed an increase of reported child sex trafficking online by 840% or 46% from 2010 to 2015. And from 2013 to 17, 75% of these reports were involved with a child being sold online. Health characteristics of a trafficked individual. These individuals may be treated as trash without much attention given to their emotional or physical health. And here are some signs that you could notice. Malnutrition, dehydration, or poor personal hygiene. STDs, signs of rape or sexual abuse, bruising, broken bones, or any other signs of untreated medical issues, critical diseases such as cancer, diabetes, or heart disease. And then adding to the physical signs that are also signs that a victim is being controlled by someone else. Does not have possession of personal documents such as passport or travel documents. Suffers from verbal or psychological abuse that is planned to intimidate, degrade, or frighten the individual. Pimps have control over money and the victim has no money or little money on them. Tattoos that might consist of the group that they are part of. Or if they have gifts or are giving gifts that don't match up the income status, that is another identification. And then lastly, are you ready to help put an end to human sex trafficking? Here are some questions that you can ask if you suspect that you have come in contact with a potential victim. Is the person free to leave the work site? Has there been any physical, sexual, or psychological abuse? Does the person have a passport, a valid ID card, and do they have access to those documents? What is the pay and conditions of employment? How did the individual arrive to this destination if the suspected victim is a foreign national, which means if they're from overseas? Has the individual been threatened or a family member been threatened? Does the person have a sense of fear that something will happen to them or to their family member if they have left the job? And different resources that can help with human trafficking. Here's the national hotline that you can contact and report possible sex trafficking if you have seen it. Or Oasis of Hope is a website that helps these victims through faith-based homes and helping raise awareness of sex trafficking in America. And you can be a part of this team if you want to. Just visit their website at oasisofhopeusa.org. And anyone can report possible trafficking cases. If the victim turns out to be under 18, the U.S. professionals that work in law enforcement, health care, social care, mental care, and education are mandated reporters. That includes us. Having people educating, especially professionals that are on the front line, can promptly pick out a trafficking victim and have them treated accordingly. Speak out, fight back. Thank you so much.